In this video, I'm going to show you some tricks for how to be really good at writing intervals that involve the sixth and also the seventh, because there are a few things that you can do to make your life a little bit easier. Now, regardless of the different tricks that you might learn about doing different intervals, don't ever forget that you could always do an interval by doing the standard method, which is, for example, let's say I want to build a major sixth above an A flat. I can always solve this problem by writing the key signature of A flat. So never lose sight of that fact. You can employ that method for any kind of interval in case you can't remember any of the tricks. And you start on A flat and you count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you look at the key signature that has a flat, and that does not have a flat because it's not in the key signature. So that, in fact, is a major sixth. But here's the trick I wanted to show you. If we took a scale, a simple scale like C, and we went from the first note to the fifth note, we can see obviously that the sixth note of the scale is just one note higher. In fact, it is a major second higher than the fifth. From G to A, it's 2 half steps, G, G sharp, A. And the reason I'm showing you that is because you might be rather good at getting the intervals of the fifth rather quickly because of that little trick that I showed you, that if the bottom note and the top note have the same accidental, right? If they have the same accidental, then they are perfect fifths. So all of these are perfect fifths. And of course, the only one that doesn't work for is the one that starts on a B. The B to F interval, we've talked about that several times, that you can't depend on the top and the bottom being the same accidental and being a perfect fifth. In fact, for that interval, that's a sharp on the top and a natural on the bottom, and that would be a perfect fifth. But for all of the other ones, in order for it to be a perfect fifth, we have the same accidental on the top and the bottom. Well, if we know that, and if we can do that in our head, then to get the major sixth, all you need to do is go to the top note of a perfect fifth and go a major second higher, which again, you might be able to do that in your head because a major second is 2 half steps. 2 half steps higher than a G is an A. So this must be the major sixth. I'm just going a major second higher than the perfect fifth. Again, assuming that if the question was, please write a major sixth higher than an E flat, you might be able to get the B flat in your head because that is a perfect fifth interval. A major second higher than a B flat is a C. So that would be the major sixth. And if you wanted to do a major sixth higher than an A flat, then you might want to do the perfect fifth first. It's pretty obvious that it would have to be an E flat, and then a major second higher than E flat would be F. So the major sixth would be A flat to F. And on this one, the perfect fifth is above an F sharp, for example. Easily answered by putting a C sharp. That's the perfect fifth. And then to make the major sixth, you would have to go a major second higher than a C sharp. You might do that in the keyboard, or perhaps you can do that in your head. A major second higher than a C sharp is a D sharp. So that would be the major sixth. Of course, this one, might not be all that helpful because you might not know that one really quickly from a B to an F sharp, but certainly you could go a major second higher than that as well and get the interval of the major sixth from the perfect fifth. So let me show you how that might work. Let's say the question was, write a minor sixth above E flat. Okay, so watch me do this. I'm going to say, well, I know above an E flat, a perfect fifth, I could do that in my head because the accidentals are the same on the top and the bottom. I also know that a major second above that would be the major sixth interval. So to go from a perfect fifth to a major sixth, it's just a matter of going up a major second. And to make it minor, I just need to lower that. In other words, as you know, a minor interval is contracted 1/2 step from the major. So here's the answer. With a little practice, you might be able to do that in your head, or at least very quickly. Now, of course, the standard way of doing that would be just to say a minor sixth above E flat. You would write the key signature of E flat. You would count up 6 notes, and you would see that the bottom note is E flat, and the top note is C natural. That would be the major sixth, like we wrote here, and then you could turn it into the minor sixth the same way. So whatever way works for you is just fine. Let's try one more of these. Let's try the interval. Let's say we want a diminished sixth above an F sharp. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this as much as I can in my head. I'm going to say, well, I know that the perfect fifth above an F sharp is a C sharp. Same accidental on the top and bottom. I know that a major sixth would be just a major second higher, which would be a D sharp. And then if I want to get a diminished sixth, I know that I've got to contract that by 2 half steps. So I'm going to say, okay, D sharp contracted once is D natural, contracted again would be D flat. And that's the answer. That's a diminished sixth. What if the question had been, can you write an augmented sixth above an F sharp? Well, I would do the same thing. I could say, well, a perfect fifth is F sharp to C sharp. A major second above that C sharp is D sharp. And to make a major sixth augmented, I need to expand that interval. So if I'm expanding the upper note, D sharp, I'm just going to draw a line here, then I would make that a D double sharp and keep the F sharp on the bottom, and that would be an augmented sixth. The next thing I'm going to show you is another trick, and this is for getting the interval of the seventh. Again, let's take an easy example. Let's start with a C scale, and let's go to the 7th note of the C scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now the first thing I notice about a 7th is that's a long distance. That's a lot of notes to count in, and I could make a mistake pretty easily in trying to write the 7th interval. However, if I went one more note higher to 8, which is really back to 1, isn't it? This is C, and if I go all the way up to the 8th note, I'm back on a C. This is an octave. And of course, an octave is the easiest interval to figure out. It's just the same note, an octave higher. It might be easier for me to figure out the 7th by going up the octave and then coming back, and you probably remember there's only a half step between the 7th and the 8th scale degree. Remember, major second, minor second, major second, major second, major second, minor second. So I go back a minor second, which is a half step, and I can easily get the interval of the major seventh. So let me show you how I would do that in my head. The question is, write a major seventh above a C. And what I do in my head is I actually go up not a major seventh, but I go up an octave. And then I come back a half step. A half step lower than C is B. So that's the minor second, or the half step. I go down, and that would be the major seventh. Let's see how that might work in another key. Let's say the question is, write a major seventh above E flat. So I could count up 7 if you wanted to, but I said, well, wait a minute. What if I counted up an octave, 8 notes, and just put another E flat up there? It's quite easy to do. That's the octave. To get the major seventh, I just need to come down a minor second. And you can do it on a keyboard, or you might be able to do it in your head, but the note that's a half step lower than E flat is just D. So that must be a major seventh. And of course, if the question is more difficult than that, let's say you weren't asked for a major seventh, but instead you were asked to write a minor seventh above E flat. Well, you can always do the major seventh first. Once you have the major seventh, then it's pretty easy to figure out how to turn it into a minor seventh. You just need to contract it again. So that would be the minor seventh. Of course, a diminished seventh, you'd have to contract it twice from the major seventh. So D, D flat, D double flat. And then an augmented seventh, you would expand from the major seventh. So you'd keep the E flat on the bottom, but take the top note D and expand it, making it D sharp. Of course, that's a pretty interesting interval. Can you see that? E flat to D sharp. The D sharp is really just enharmonic to E flat. The sound of an augmented seventh interval is the same as an octave. Well, I hope you find those little tricks helpful.